Hello there and welcome to the show. Africa's Development Bank says it received $200 million in investment from the Clean Technology Fund for the Facility for Energy Inclusion. Federal Inland Revenue Service FRS says all companies must remit value-added tax and withholding tax by the 21st day of every month. On the show today, we're staying with President Muhammadu Buhari's directive to stop forex allocation to food importers. Welcome to the show. African Development Bank says it received $20 million investment from the Clean Technology Fund for the Facility for Energy Inclusion. The bank in a statement said the Facility for Energy Inclusion was sponsored by the AFDB to provide sustainable financing for small-scale renewables in Africa. FEI is a $500 million financing platform with the aim to catalyze financial support for innovative energy access solutions. The Director of Climate Change and Green Growth, AFDB, Anthony Young, says the fund would contribute to economic and social growth of the African continent. The Federal Inland Revenue Service, FRS, has said all companies must remit value-added tax and withholding tax by the 21st day of every month. Now, Chairman FRS Babatunde Fowler says the agency has noticed that some companies did not deduct VAT and WHT from the compensation paid to their distributors, contrary to the provisions of the company's income tax. Mr. Fowler adds that compensation due to companies, distributors, and customers in the form of commission and rebate, and by whatever means of payments, whether by cash, credit note, or even goods in trade, must be subjected to VAT, WHT at the appropriate rate as applicable. The Nigeria Employers Consultative Association and the Center for Social Justice says the directive by President Muhammadu Buhari to the Central Bank of Nigeria to withhold foreign exchange for importation of food is coming at a wrong time. The Lagos Chamber of Commerce and Industry, on the other hand, called for clarification on the food items to be restricted from foreign exchange allocation. Director General SCCI Muda Yusuf says there is a need to get more details and clarifications on what exactly constitutes food items in the context of the presidential directive. Mr. Yusuf adds that the harmonized system codes of the items affected need to be indicated. Africa's annual food import bill of $35 billion is estimated to rise to about $110 billion by 2025. Now, this weakens Africa's economies, decimates its agricultural and export jobs from the continent. President of the African Development Bank, Akinwumi Adesina, said the amount, that is $35 billion, is just about the same amount the continent needs to close its power deficit. To rapidly support Africa to diversify its economies, the bank has committed $24 billion towards agriculture in the next 10 years, with a sharp focus on food self-sufficiency and agricultural industrialization. Let's narrow it down to Nigeria. According to the former Minister of Agriculture, Audu Ogbe, Nigeria's food import bills, that's annually, stood at $22 billion US. The situation, he said, was really unsustainable as it poses danger to the nation's economy. The former minister adds that if any country fails to fix its agricultural problem, where people cannot be self-sufficient, feeding on less than 15% of its budgetary allocation, then there is trouble around the corner. Cumulatively, total imports to Nigeria rose by 2.6% year-on-year to 102 billion naira in March 2019. Now, boosted by purchases of energy goods, 796.3%, manufactured goods, 101.3%, solid minerals, 70.8%, raw materials, 46.9%, and agricultural goods, 61.3%. Head of Research at FSDH Merchant Bank, Ayo Akinwumi, joins me live from Marina to discuss this. And later on the show, the CEO of Cowrie Assets, Johnson Chukwu, will also join us from London to share his thoughts on President Buhari's directive. Ayo, it's glad to have you on the show. Ayo, this is another one. We just, it's been restriction of 43 items for now, but now it has to do with food items. How did this come to you?
Good afternoon. Thank you for having me. Well, there are many parts to the directive, or whatever we can call it. A lot of people have discussed extensively about it in terms of the manner in which it came. I think, one of the things that people have said, which I shared, is that the directive the way it came, may undermine the independence of the central bank. I would have preferred a situation where the president called the central bank governor and discussed with him on a private note, rather than going to discuss it the way he passed across the message, because of the signal he's sending to the market. However, let's leave that and move on. Part of the things that the president has said, the central bank already is working towards that area. A few months ago, the central bank governor announced that they are going to restrict the allocation of FX into importing of milk into Nigeria, just to encourage local production, to generate employment, and to ensure that we can export jobs. However, it is good for us to note at this point that speaking to people on the streets and on ground, it doesn't show that we have sufficiency in food production in Nigeria, that restriction of foreign exchange to the importing of food at this moment will be beneficial to the Nigerian economy. If it is not properly handled, it can lead to one or two things. Number one, escalation of food prices. Number two, and smuggling. We must also note that Central Bank has also said that any item they restrict foreign exchange for their import to Nigeria, anyone who brings such items to Nigeria, that person may be, or the company may be blacklisted. So it's not really saying you can go and source the foreign exchange anywhere. If you are caught, you are going to be blacklisted. You will not be able to transact any business in Nigeria. So saying, giving a blanket, restriction at this point, at another time when we do not have self-sufficiency in local production, is not good for our economy.
Ayo, now some have come out to say that this is the time to stimulate, encourage, and accelerate production in Nigeria. But like you said, let's look at rice, for example. We're doing 3.7 million tons according to what we have, and we consume about 7 million tons annually. We are yet to meet up when it comes to demand. So how do you see this playing out with our local manufacturers? Can they really be competitive?
Okay, so that's a very good point, which of course we have discussed extensively personally, and as a department which I work in FSTH, we have discussed extensively that you need to create structures that will give you local competitiveness. And I can tell you straight away today, as someone who goes to the market to get data on food price on a monthly basis, with which we used to write our inflation watch report, the price of locally produced rice as we speak today is higher than the price of imported rice. Two things. Number one, the environment is not competitive enough to encourage the production of this key commodity in a way that will lower cost. Now, of course, the more you improve on the scale of production, then the lower your cost will be. So what I think we should do today is to say, how do we ensure that we'll scale up the production of these essential commodities? Now, if we increase the scale, then the cost can come down such that we will not be bringing rice from Thailand, from Brazil, and then it gets to Nigeria here, it is still cheaper than what we are producing in Nigeria here. So from the figure you gave, 3,000 to, 3 million metric tons to 7 local production and to 7, it's not something that you can wrap up immediately. We always talk about the issue of securities on the farmlands. So there are things that we need to put in place to ensure that indeed we are able to meet the local demand before we engage in any form of restriction. Any form of restrictions that will lead to increase in the price of food is not a policy that we should announce. It's not a policy that we should implement. It is not a policy that will support the federal government's agenda to alleviate poverty in Nigeria.
Ayo, let's look now at the effect on the currency, the Naira. What effect do you see this having? Some say they might be a little bashing on Nigeria's currency.
So if you don't do that, if you don't allocate FX, it's about law of demand and supply. If the policy comes to effect and then they reduce the amount of dollar that they spend on importing of food items, what it will do is that there will be less demand for dollar at the official market. Like I mentioned earlier, that there may likely be a corresponding increase in the demand at the non-official market. However, like I mentioned, the Central Bank governor has said clearly, any item that is under restriction lists to access foreign exchange, it's not that you have your foreign exchange on your own level for you to bring it into Nigeria. If you are found bringing into the country, you are going to be blacklisted. But I'm saying that with what we are having today, it is not, there will be an increase in the price of this commodity. And I do not know where the data is coming from that we are self-sufficient. If we are not self-sufficient, this is not a luxury good. This is food that people need for, to live. So if you do not allocate foreign exchange to it, to import it, the only thing that can happen is hunger, increased poverty, malnutrition, and that is not what any policy is intended to achieve.
Yeah, indeed. Ayo Akinwumi, head researcher for DH Merchant Bank. Thank you very much as always. Thank you for your thoughts, sharing your thoughts with us this afternoon. Well, we'll take a break, and when we return, we'll continue on this. It's really very important. We're talking food here. We'll continue this discussion after this break.